One of the most fundamental statements that you're going to write are conditional statements. Conditional statements allow us to control the flow of a program and decide whether certain code should execute or whether it shouldn't. So one of the very first conditional statements that you'll ever use whenever you're programming happens in the very beginning of any tutorial that you're doing on any language is the if statement. So let's go ahead and look at how if statements work in C#. So if we type if, in Visual Studio we can hit tab tab, and that will go ahead and build out an entire if statement for us. So this is it. This is how it works. We're done. We can leave. Nope, not yet. So basically what we're saying is that if some expression is true, we're going to execute code in between the curly braces. So let's go ahead and put some code in here. Console.writeLine, and we'll say hello world. And boom, there we go. So there we go. We have an if statement and this will work. I'll go ahead and run it just to prove it to you. But what we're basically saying is that if this expression is true, and in this case, we're just putting the Boolean true, which means that it's always going to run. So this isn't very interesting right now because we don't want that to happen. Then it's going to execute the code in between these curlies. In this case, we just have console.writeLine hello world. Now, what if it wasn't true? What could we do? Well, we can have else it's run something else. So we'll say bye bye world. Now, the compiler knows that this can never execute because our expression is true. It's always true. It's a constant. So let's fix that. Let's say that we're going to do this based on the value of some name. And I'll just put my name in here. Then in our expression, we're going to say if name is equal to Matt, say hello world. Otherwise, say bye bye world. Now, it's hard coded here, so we're always going to hit hello world still. But you can start to see the point here. So if I change this to will, let's say, then we should see bye bye world, but not hello world. But the way that we block our code is with these curly braces, and that's the block of code that's going to run based on whether it's true or false. So we get bye bye world because will is not Matt. So what if we had multiple conditions that we wanted to evaluate here? We could do if else statements. So we could say else if name equals Matt or equals Matt. Now we'll say bye bye world, and then we can have a final else to say something like what? How'd I get here? So let's see. So now that we have Matt, let's see what all executes. Just bye bye world. So what happens is it says if name is equal to will, run this block of code here. Then it says else if name is equal to Matt, run this block of code. And if none of those things are true, then run this block of code. And we didn't hit that, but if we were to change this to the name to Matthew, and we ran it, we would hit the last else statement instead. So that's our catch-all. If we want to make sure we run at least something, we can do that. But in most cases, like this, you may not need an else because you might always want to run this statement here, rather than in this case, you're only going to run it if none of the other things evaluate. So you just got to be careful there on how your control flow works. Do you want it to always run, or do you want it to only run in certain situations? So this can get messy. You can see it can be a lot of typing and writing out code. So what else could we do to make this work? Well, we also have switch statements available to us. So let's do a switch statement. And I'm going to just put the expression here, which is name. Then I can say case Matt. And I'll say console.writeLine. Let's just say hello Matt. And then on our default, we have to add a break here as well. And then on our default, we'll say who dis. because who are you? I don't know. Who am I saying hello to? Then we'll add a will here. So this looks similar to the if statement, but it's a little more concise than the if-else statements. There's also one other thing we can do here that I will show you. So let's check this out. So right now the name is Matthew here. So it's going to come down. It's going to say switch based on Matthew, the name. And then it's going to hit each of these case statements. And whenever one evaluates to true, it's going to fall in and run that block of code. So in this case, none of them should be hit, and we should just get who this is. All right, and that's what we got. All right, so what if we wanted to shorten this up a little bit and say, you know what, Matt and Matthew are exactly the same, really. So I could just say case Matthew here, but don't put anything in there. So now what's going to happen is if either of these get hit, then it's going to hit that first right line. Let's check it out. So this can be good whenever you have some conditions that you want the same thing to happen, but you don't have to write that code over and over again. If I know that I always want to say hello, Matt, here, I wouldn't want to have to also put it here, right? So now I don't have to. It's just a really shorthand way to do that. So these are two of the primary ways that we do conditional statements: if statements and switch statements. So go ahead and play with these. There's going to be some drills around this because you're going to use these a lot. And come back and we'll talk about some other types of statements that you'll be working with.